Hey Mixers, welcome back to another college football player props video. We had a horrible week one in college football. There are a few little bright spots, but it seems like everyone across the internet kind of had a bad day. But let me jump into that and we'll show you why we had a bad day and how we managed to manage that bad day so that it wasn't a horrible day. And then we'll jump into the player props for tomorrow. All right, guys, so a lot of red on the screen. We went 4 for 12. Technically, we double counted a lot of these players because their lines dropped from when we bet them a month ago and we rebet them and then they still went under. So I counted those all as losses. I double counted those players because I did bet it twice and I did tell you to bet it twice. Hopefully you just didn't listen to me, but I only ended up minus 3.5 units on the day. So this is a good lesson for bankroll management. So we originally had Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik together in a four-man with their two wide receivers. One of them obviously ended up getting refunded on a lot of apps because he got hurt and then didn't come back. And then I had Arch Manning, Carson Beck, and Rocco Beck all in separate tickets. So we lost basically 1, 2, 3, 4 units there. And then when we rebet it, I had Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, Arch Manning, and Carson Beck all together in a four-man. So that was 1 unit. So now we're down 5 units. And then we lost a half unit on the Utah-UCLA game. No, I think that was a full unit. So that was 6. And then 7. So we lost 7 units basically on the day. And then on our plus plays, we made 4. So we ended up down about 3. I put 3.5 here. So when I did the math, that number's more accurate. So just barely I came up with 3, but I do think it was 3.5. So we ended up down 3.5 units, which isn't terrible. Obviously not great, not a good day. And we have to dig ourselves out of this hole a little bit with college football. But it wasn't a disastrous day where it could have been like 10 units down. So you really do want to manage your bankroll, make 1 unit plays, make half unit plays, especially early in the season. Don't be making those 2, 3, 4 unit plays and just throwing a ton of money at players that we don't know what they look like on these new teams yet. And we'll start to get the feel for them. And I think we already started to a little bit. And then my leans here, Sawyer Robertson was the only one that came through. These leans, I sometimes bet them and sometimes don't. In this case, I did bet all of these. So my leans did not come through. But Sawyer Robinson did sling the ball, and we are going to go right back to him today. I wanted to pull up my data from last year. This shows the hit rates on like some of the most popular players that I bet on last year. So this is sorted by how many times I bet on them. So the person that I bet on the most last year and won the most betting on was Shedeur Sanders, and then Travis Hunter second. So I was obviously pairing those two together quite a lot, and that worked out for me. So when you find something like that where you've got a couple of players together that are hitting, roll with that, because even if they miss, it's going to make up for all the money that you made on them. It's not going to really crush you. And then BYU's quarterback here is on here, Avery Johnson. A lot of Big 12 because I am here in Utah, so I pay attention to the Big 12 a little bit more. But our data so far obviously doesn't look very good after 1 week. Here are the matchups that I pulled together as sort of the matchups that I was interested in looking at. The Iowa State game, Baylor, SMU, Illinois, the Fighting Illini, and Duke, Boston College and Michigan State, Michigan and Oklahoma. Of course, all eyes will be on that game, although I don't have any bets for you in that game. And then the Arizona-Mississippi State game, which I think is going to be a high-scoring affair. So we are going to be taking some bets in that game. So because we're not taking any bets in the Iowa State game, let me just tell you what I'm thinking about this one. This tends to be like a low-scoring, grinded-out, slow-paced matchup here, and Iowa State is favored to win. It was 2.5, and I kind of liked it there, but then it opened up to 3, and now I'm completely off of it. So I in fact would probably, like Iowa a little bit at the +3, or maybe a little bit, if it continues to open up, then I would definitely more like the Iowa side of things. I do like Rocco Beck to throw, but I don't think I can rely on it yet. He did have a good game he played in week 0, so he's had 2 games already, and he had like a bad passing game and then a good passing game. All right, so let's jump into some of these picks that I have for you. So first thing, we're going to go straight back to Baylor's quarterback. I do think he's going to have to be slinging the ball most of the year this year. He was able to have a great day passing against like close matchups, like matchups where he could win. And that was the case in week 1 when he threw for over 400 yards against Auburn. Obviously, they did end up losing that game. I think this is over 300 passing yards on Underdog, and it's 287.5 on Prize Picks, so that's where we'll be taking it. But I think that he has a couple of great pass catchers, Josh Cameron being, that number one kind of X receiver guy. And then the wide receiver that we're taking today, Cole Wilson, has emerged as like an amazing slot receiver, at least in the, the one game sample that we have so far. He had 8 catches for 134 yards. So we're going to pair those two up today because they did seem to have a pretty good connection. I still like Josh Cameron, and his line is at 55.5, I think, and I like it there. But I'm going to roll with Cole Wilson in this one over 45.5 and see if we can ride that trend and ride that connection that those two had. And then in the ASU game, we're going to take Sam Levitt over his 240.5 passing yards line. I don't like taking his number one wide receiver because it's basically set at 100 yards, which is pretty high. And of course, I think he could get there. I just think that ASU probably will be winning the game for most of the time, at least. And so even though Sam Levitt is a great passer, I do think they're going to try and chew up some clock here. And I would even almost consider going under on that wide receiver's passing yards. So next year on the other side of that ball, with the Mississippi State team, we're going to take Blake Shapen over 243.5 passing yards. He just had 272 against a bad team in a win. And now he's going to be projected to be losing this game probably for most of the time. I think that Arizona secondary can be attacked. So we're going to go with Blake Shapen over 243.5 passing yards and then take his number one guy, Brennan Thompson, over 47.5 receiving yards. He did have 92 on 7 catches in week 1. I don't think that ASU is going to let them hyper target Brennan Thompson like that again. They'll force them to find some other guys to make plays, but I do think he makes enough plays that he gets us to this line. So what we're doing, and if you missed the first video, what we like to do in college football is there's a heavy correlation between quarterbacks going over their lines and their number one wide receiver going over their line. So we like to put those in a 4-pack, get like 7 or 8x out of it, and then you only have to hit 1 out of every 8 or 9 times to just break even. So we're taking Sam Levitt by himself, probably with some kind of promo in just like a 2-man, and then I'm going to take these 4 players, Sawyer Robertson on Baylor with his number one wide receiver, well, not his number one wide receiver, but his slot receiver, who might become his number one wide receiver, we don't know. And then Blake Shapen on Mississippi State with his number one wide receiver in a 4-pack there. And then Sam Levitt will just take by himself. Some other players to kind of keep an eye on. I do live in Utah, so I'm a little bit of I pay attention to the Utah teams. And BYU had a great first week against a bad team, obviously, and they're playing Stanford, kind of another bad team. They're expected to win by 20 points, basically. But I am keeping my eye on their running back for longest rush, because I think his rushing yards is set a little bit too high, like 85.5. He could easily get there, of course, but I like him for his longest rush at like 21.5. So I'm keeping my eye on that. And then I'm also keeping my eye on Chase Roberts, BYU's number one wide receiver. He only had 1 catch, which did go for a touchdown in that first game. And they spread the ball around between like 12 different receivers because they were winning by like 60 points. And they could do whatever they want. BYU is basically free rolling this year because they have, an awesome recruit coming in later next year. So they're just kind of free rolling this season, and they have a great defense. And I do think they are going to probably spread the ball around when they can, when they're not in a close game that they feel like they need to win. So I'm keeping my eye on those. But for now, I'm staying away because they are favored to win by so much in that Stanford matchup. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you haven't seen my football videos, my NFL football videos, we did a lot better there. And we've been crushing it in the WNBA as well all summer long. So if you want to check out my other videos, just, go check those out as well. Another thing that we like to do here on the channel is that we like to give away some free cash if at least 2 of our best bets hit. So what I need you to do to get in the money for that cash giveaway is just make sure you're subscribed, like the video, and then choose 2 out of these 5 best bets to hit. And if they do, you'll be in the running with everybody else who comments that is correct. And, one of you will ultimately win that cash prize. As we get more and more subscribers, that cash prize will go up. All right, thanks, guys.